I want to take some time to talk about the new patch 10.10, or as I like to call it, 10.1 Redux, because no one does conventions like this. 10.10? It's 10.10.1. 10.1. I'll highlight correctly eventually. Anyway, let's try to not make this video longer than it's going to be, inevitably. We'll get back to the highlights, because we'll discuss those at the end to kind of go over kind of everything as a whole. So, new system changes. Super Dense Galaxy. Big change to Super Dense Galaxy. So, it used to be Super Dense Galaxy. You had to get to level 5 to get your free FON. You now just get it after the stage 3 carousel. You are no longer forced to level to 5 as quickly as possible. Good change. Happy about this. So if you've ever used Nico's help while there's no champions in the bag for that, just nothing would happen, and you would be really confused. Now you get an error message saying that there's nothing in the bag. I've always thought Nico shouldn't work like this. That if you have a Nico's and you use a Nico's, you should just get the champion regardless if it's in the bag or not. That's a design feature on them, whether or not it's something they want to do. I'm not a big fan of it, but whatever. At least you're getting the notification now. I've actually never seen this happen. It really only happens when you're looking for Tier 4, Tier 5 champions and doing stupid things like trying to get 3 stars of them. Reduce the chances of a full item carousel, especially in early carousel. So, I'm iffy on this. See, the thing with getting full items early in the game is that it can be kind of unbalanced, because when it comes to full items, some of them are incredibly good, while the others are kind of meh. And you'd rather just have just another part to build an item rather than having this meh completed item. But I think most people will be pretty happy that we're getting full items later in that random chance box. So this is beyond stage 5, the stage 5 carousel, which is the first one where you should be having full items. This is before that, sometimes in stage 2. I've never seen stage 2, but I've seen it in 3 and 4 a few times, where you can get a random full item carousel. I'm kind of... It didn't really bother me that much, but I can understand people who didn't like it too much. This one I think is actually a really good change. This is a pretty big change. So, item drops occur in earlier PvE stages. So in general, air quotes, everyone should have about the same amount of item components through not just stage 1, all of the PvE stages. So sometimes what this meant was that you could get very few items in the early PvE stages, and then just get piles of items when you get to the last PvE stage with Raptors. I've seen this happen a lot, where I've gotten like a 5-6 item drop at Raptors, and I'm just like, yay, I got all the items. But I only have 20 health because I didn't get any items before this, and I had no carries. So, why this is important, and why this is a good change. The primary determining factor of your build, so if I was to rank out the determining factors of how you should determine what your composition is going to be and how you are going to build, the number one factor should always be items. There are other factors on that list, but your primary factor should always be items. So, if you get your items earlier now, it should help you determine what the most optimal comp to go for should be. Now, that's not the end-all be-all. Items shouldn't be the 100% reason you went for a composition, but it should be the primary reason why you went for a composition. So, getting a more consistent start with items will be helpful in determining what comp you want to run, what comp your comp's going to be. New Galaxy, Galactic Armory, all players start with the same 2 full items. I hate this. I'm not going to lie, I hate this. I think this is actually a horrible idea. The reason why it's a horrible idea is that it means everyone's going to be fighting over... It kind of goes along with what I said before. Everyone's going to be fighting over the same compositions. If everyone starts with 2 Seraphs, everyone's going to run Seraph builds. If everyone starts with a Death Cap, everyone's going to be running for Sorcerer builds. So I'm not the biggest fan of this one. To be honest, had they made it so that this Galaxy, instead, every item drop was a full item, which would have been inherently absurd and probably piss more people off. I probably would have enjoyed that and liked that a bit more than everyone starting off with the same 2 full items. Like, they can't make it random, because the sheer amount of imbalance of just giving people random full items to start is going to be mind-numbing. Imagine you get IE and Jewel Gauntlet. Someone's going to blow up with that. There's just nothing you can do. It's just, or you get a Death Cap and a Seraphs, or Death Cap and Morello, or probably more like Seraphs and Morello. Like, there's so many completed items you can get that you're just going to run over people with. Like, it doesn't even matter what the other person has. Whereas other times you're going to low roll and you're going to get, like, the Frost Orb or a Zeke's. And you're like, okay, I don't know what to do with this. Guess I'll just do dumb stuff. So, I'm going to be, like I said, I'm not a fan of this Galaxy. I don't think it's going to be that enjoyable to most people. I would have much rather just have a Galaxy where everything just had a complete... Each carousel just had a completed item or something like that. That's just my take. Updated Galaxy odds. Not much to say here. Traits. So, this is probably the biggest change, and probably what I'm going to title this video. Mechs got hit with a nerf hammer again. I'm kind of surprised that Mech keeps getting the hammer, because I felt like a few times I've had really good mech builds that just didn't go anywhere. And I just lost, and I'm like, I'm not quite sure why I lost. I had pretty optimal mech items here. Like, I think I had 5th, and I had, like, as optimal a Kaisa, 3-star, and Shaco as physically possible, and it's not like my mech was terrible, and I just lost, and I was really confused. But this one is going to hit mech pretty hard. Basically, this is a 100% nerf. If it's unclear, this is a 100% nerf across all levels of mech. It's a level 1 mech, which means you have 1 stars of each champion, is almost the same. It's slightly worse. But as you scale up, it's going to get worse and worse and worse of a nerf. This basically means mech's not going to kill anything. Which, in their defense, mech's not really supposed to kill anything. It's why it's called Mech Infiltrator. The infiltrators kill everything. Mech just kind of stands there and takes a beating. We'll see if this destroys mech. I don't think it will entirely destroy mech, because, like I said, the main damage dealer in a mech-based build is the infiltrators. Speaking of infiltrators, I want to talk about this change a bit, because this is actually a bigger change than I think people realize. So, the way infiltrators have worked, if you have an infiltrator, and it starts in the attack range of something, so you have a Shaco, if you put that Shaco in the front line, and there was some enemy right beside him, in the front line, Shaco would not jump to the back line. He would just bash that enemy in the head. Or stab them, I guess. He has knives, I think. Stab. So, now you're probably thinking, like, why is this relevant? Why is this important? Well, there's 2 reasons why this is important. One is for Kaisa. Kaisa's attack is ranged. So, Kaisa could, theoretically, you could have put Kaisa on the front line, and she would easily be in range of some other champion, which is kind of important if you had a demo spat, because you could use that to easily pick out what you needed demo spatted, stunned instantly. It was also relevant on some of the blasters, notably Misfortune. So, a pretty common build was to give Misfortune an Infiltrator spat, so that way she would get the Infiltrator perks. But because she was a blaster and had a ranged attack, she didn't jump to the back line. She just stood where she was and just pew-pewed something. So you got all the positives of the Infiltrator without jumping into the back line and risking getting demolished. So this is a pretty big nerf to Infiltrator spat. It essentially makes it so you can only really put Infiltrator spat on things that attack at close range. It was pretty common to make an Infiltrator spat, in my opinion, particularly to put it on an Aurelia or a Misfortune. Infiltrator spat should still be pretty good on Aurelia, but it's not going to be so good on Misfortune anymore. So, like I said, this is a pretty big nerf to the Infiltrator spat in particular. So, if you're just not going to be using that item on your Misfortunes anymore. It's pretty simple. Like, you're only going to be putting this on things that beat people in the face at close range. Space Pirate item, drop, boost, okay. I shrug at that. Now we get into the champion changes. So at tier 1, Poppy is getting a nerf. Everyone wanted Poppy to get a nerf. I'm gonna say something that's probably gonna be a little probably gonna cause a little conflict. I don't think Poppy really needed a nerf. I think functionally the way shields in this game probably needed a nerf. The problem with Poppy is when you get to a point where this shield gain that you have is greater than the amount of damage your opponents can do. So, suppose you had a Poppy shield, a Poppy that was tier 3, gaining 500 shield every time she did the buckler toss. That means you had to deal more than 500 damage, or else she would be gaining more shields as time went on. So if you did 400 damage, so if she had her shields, 500 shields, you did 400 damage, and then she did the buckler toss, she'd have 600 shields. So this stacks up over time. Functionally, I think that is a bad idea, because it means that your composition needs to focus on that Poppy just to kill that Poppy. What I would have liked to have seen is that shields don't stack like that. So if Poppy's shield buckler gets you 500 shields, that is the max amount of shields you can get off that ability. So if I had 100 shields on Poppy did buckler toss to gain 500 shields. Instead of having 600 shields, she would have 500 shields. I feel like functionally that works out a lot better, and you don't have to do as directed nerfs as these were, that I think kind of were probably unnecessary if they just added that feature in. This is pretty much the same problem they had with protectors early on, that protectors were just gaining infinity shields because they would ult so fast. I think a similar nerf was probably justified, and they should have made all shields work like that. But we'll see what this does. I just think my way was probably better. Me speaking as kind of rando on a chat here. Next change, Twisted Fate. Nerf it 5-star. Or 5-star. Nerf it 3-star. That's fair. Twisted Fate does a ton of damage. Even early in the game, Twisted Fate does a ton of damage. So, I think that's probably fair. Zaha AD nerf. Is it needed? Maybe. Don't know. I don't have too much to say about this. Zaha's really good as a carry, especially when you get 3-star and you can give her a last wish and an IE. But otherwise, I'm kind of like, eh. We'll see. I hate the Ziggs change. Ziggs should require 45 mana. I don't think anything should ever cost 40 mana. It's because if something costs 40 mana, it means 2 Sarahs insta-cast. And this is a significant problem on Ziggs, because Ziggs is a demolitionist. So if you have another demolitionist, every ult he throws is going to stun something. That is too many stuns, in my opinion. Yasuo, because of the functional change to Yasuo, he's 100% worse. He's just not as good as he was now that they've changed how he functions. So he's getting a tiny buff. It actually is a lot of HP to give him, but even so, because of his functionality change, I don't think he's that good. Karma. I want to talk about Karma. This is probably my favorite change on this patch. Well, maybe my second favorite. There's another change coming up soon that I think I like even more. So, Darkstar kind of fell off the bat. People still play it, but it's not actually good. So, and Karma, of all the Mystics, Karma is getting the least play. So, in return, Karma is getting a huge buff to that ult. What was the 2-star Karma buff is now the 1-star Karma buff. And 2-star now gives 75%. These numbers here are actually insane. Because you have to realize, if you tether this Karma to a Jhin, that's this much damage buff. Because of the way Jhin functions, that's this much more damage he does. Just straight up. That's a lot of damage. That's a lot of damage, guys. I would not be surprised if you see 3 Darkstar or 6 Darkstar make a comeback. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jhin Guard make a comeback off this, where you run 4 Vanguards, Jhin, Karma, probably probably Lulu and Kassadin. I think those two would be the two others I run in that build, and just laugh because I think that's probably a really good build. Probably is not Kassadin. I'd have to think about what your 8th would be, but your 7 would 100% be the 4 Vanguards, Jin, Karma, and Lulu. But I love this change. Makes me happy. Syndra's getting a buff for multiple reasons, primarily for one that we're going to talk about in when we get to the items. But Syndra actually is really weak right now, especially with the changes that are coming up. So this buff I think was probably well deserved. Kale 3-star is getting a nerf. Why? I don't know. It's still 600 damage. It's going to murder everything. Vel'Koz is getting a buff. That's the balance out of change that we'll get to in a second. This Wukong change. So I think Wukong's one of the more underplayed champions in the game right now. He's actually absurd for as much HP as he has, how much stun potential he has, and the fact you can't even stop him when he's in that stun animation. It's actually ridiculous that he is unstoppable while he's spinning around like a top on everybody. Yeah, this is a really significant buff because he can easily just stun an entire composition with ease. Like, if half your team is on one side of the board, he's going to stun all of them. And I like it. This is a good change. And it's going to make him really, really good. Alright, moving on to items. So this is probably the biggest change in the patch. So, Mana Battery is getting hit pretty hard. How hard it's getting hit, I think this is actually pretty significant. So, Mana Battery has been a frustrating build for me to look at, because in order to do Mana Battery, you need 5 tiers. That's a lot of tiers. What disturbs me is the amount of consistency I've watched people get 5 tiers to make a Mana Battery build. I'm not quite sure that should actually be possible, but it feels like every game I play, somebody has a Mana Battery, and I don't like it. This is allowing way too many things to ult, especially when you put it on low mana total champions like Ziggs or Sona. Sona's actually just the worst, because Sona's also doing something useful for your entire composition every time she ults. I do not like this item at all, and from what I have heard in the next big set update, which I think is going to be 10-12, Chalice is going away. We're not going to have it anymore. This should be a significant nerf, I would think, because it takes everything off an even number of 10. A counting of 10. Everything goes in functions of 10, except for the handful that have been nerfed to go into a multiple of 5. So, by bringing it down to 8, it means that it's going to cost significantly more auto attacks in order to get your ults off, depending on how high your mana cost is going to be. From the math I've kind of loosely seen of this, I expect this to be a very big nerf. Now, it's possible I could be totally wrong, and it's not really that much of a nerf, but it is a nerf. Either way, I expect to not see nearly as many Mana Battery builds as I have been seeing on this patch, which has very much disturbed me. Next change, Deathblade starting stacks. You start with 1 stack now. You did start at 0, now you start with 1. They're doing all they can to make Deathblade a relevant item, but between the fact that Last Whisper is basically a must-have in this current patch, and that IE calls as crits, it leaves Deathblade sitting by the wayside because of how much effort it takes to get online. The good news is, at this point, with 1 stack, it means if you get 1 kill, you are functionally identical outside the crit part. Your damage is the same as IE, with 1 extra kill. Does this mean you should start making Deathblades and putting them on Jinx? I don't know. Giant Slayer is a pretty good item for Jinx. So, maybe. I would assume that you would want Deathblade on things that are going to hit a lot of targets, a large quantity of targets to build up those stacks. So a Jinx, I would think, would be good. While a Giant Slayer would be good on something that attacks a lot very fast. And an IE would be for something that needs to do crits. That would be my thought process on how you would choose which AD item you want to put on something. But we'll see how this ends up going. Red buff and Morello are getting a nerf because red buff in particular is kind of very abusive in the current patch, and you can really easily sail through the early game with it. Bug fixes. GA no longer strips various effects. There's a handful of effects that GA will wipe out. So this one, I'd love to see videos of this. I want to see what this looks like. This one, I don't even know what to say about this one. Azereth bug fix, a Misfortune bug fix. Big change. Some players are arriving late to the first carousel. One of those players would very commonly be me. My understanding is the reason this has been happening is because people on mobile are loading into the game really fast, whereas people on PC are loading into the game really slow. And lastly, when viewing your board from the carousel, so you're on the carousel, you go back to your board to see what items you are, you can now actually see those items now. Huzzah! Good change. Alright, so going back to the highlights here, I think the big thing I want to say is that for some reason, Vanguard 2 did not get nerfed. I find that kind of upsetting. Vanguard 2 is very overtuned. There's two things that are overtuned right now. Poppy and Vanguard 2. The amount of armor Vanguard 2 is giving is making it kind of impossible to kill things with physical damage in the early game without a Last Whisper. You cannot do enough physical damage to something to kill them without a Last Whisper. So you have to either get a Last Whisper or run AP builds. I don't like that those are the only two routes you can go to really beat Vanguard. And I would have liked to have seen a Vanguard 2 nerf. The other one was Poppy. Poppy did get a nerf, but like I said, really not the nerf I was looking for. I was looking more for a functionality change that kept Poppy in the game rather than blowing her up. So, overall, I don't expect significant changes from this patch outside of the fact that Mech Infiltrator is probably not going to be played as much because Mech Infiltrator's damage just got utterly destroyed in this patch, like really badly. I'm curious as to where we go from here on this patch. I think Void Brawlers might be something that we see a bit more of. I've actually had good success at running Void Brawlers without Mana Battery, so these buffs to Void Brawlers, I think might... The buffs to the Vel'Koz, I think will actually be pretty good. I think the buff to Syndra will probably bring back straight Star Guardian play again. I think that was enough of a buff to really bring her back into the realm of contention. And I think the other surprise on this was that the Rebels buff got pulled. Apparently, there was a lot of talk that the Rebels buff might have been too much. So they were supposed to have a buff for Rebels on this patch. They pulled it. I guess it was a little too good. That's really all I can say. Anyway, that's it for this video. I kept it under 25 minutes, which is mildly impressive. So I'll see you all around.